Hi everyone, be sure to subscribe, it really helps the channel. Thank you, I really appreciate it. So this update is focusing on news that I ran across today that I think are relevant to the current political situation. One, you're probably aware of the news that Trump has been diagnosed with Venus insufficiency. Venus, in this case, not the planet, although he's experiencing that as well, ironically speaking. That's one of the major problems he's currently traversing. But Venus, as in his veins, and the circulation toward the bottom of his body, circulation writ large, circulation is very important toward health. It has connections to blood pressure, it has connections to all kinds of things in the body, including cardiac issues and strokes and so on. So in that sense, it isn't great news, especially in the light of the fact that he does have planetary patterns that point toward potential health problems and which tend to more likely appear the older we are. It's just a fact of life. So, for the time being, I don't think it's a big deal, other than they also said in the report that this kind of condition tends to happen not just with age, but also to individuals that, let's just say, charitably are more out of shape than they should be. And the thought that crossed my mind was, had he perhaps trained himself, let's say a few years back, to walk the golf course instead of riding on that golf cart of his, maybe that would have helped, I don't know. In the meantime, the health aspects are threatening in his chart. They're there, and anything that shows up that in any sense points in a certain direction is dangerous. We'll see. This continues solidly into the end of the year, next year, and the year after. Whenever you see a planet like Saturn, which originates in his 12th, that is really the worst health house. That's the place of hospitals. The 6th is what you would call the standard health house, but the opposite house on the other side is therefore more dangerous. Saturn originates there. If Saturn is circulating, squaring important points in that house, Mercury, Venus, and Saturn itself, the period automatically becomes more dangerous. There's more than that as well. There's the Neptune at the very end of Pisces later this year, making a station there in a 150 known as a quincunx to his ascendant. That's another very problematic angle that he still has to sort through. And then there's the Uranus transit, which still has to finish in a square to his Mars and to his ascendant. So period is tricky, to say the least. He should be careful. And let's face it, if you've heard the news that he actually said this, it's just unbelievable. He said that he's unhappy with the fact that the Biden administration appointed Jerome Powell, who he now wants to get rid of, so he can jack up the market, which would probably be a total suicide move, because in an uncertain situation around tariffs, Powell is correct. If you lower the interest rates, you'll almost certainly guarantee a rise in inflation, which could be totally lethal and potentially put the country in a horrible place. But this guy thinks that Biden appointed Powell. I mean, the only thing worse than that is if he says Obama appointed him, or some implausible thing or other. But he appointed the man. I mean, it's like all of a sudden, with this whole MAGA thing, it doesn't seem like videotape that is available, or a video record, let's call it, because now everything is digital. But I mean, it's there. And he seems to have forgotten, and apparently in a recent meeting he fell asleep, and then when he woke up he was grousing about how Powell had been appointed by somebody else. So man is not all there, and his health is definitely a factor. And then now we have this Epstein thing. And second thing I wanted to talk about is his ex-major ally, Elon Musk, who now is just tweeting / Xing away with messages around this needs to come out, the Epstein stuff. And he's speaking logically about it, much more logically than many in the MAGA sphere. But simultaneously, his approval has gone way down. And so he's now down in the 20s. But in a way, that's good. That's good because he's not someone we can put any trust in either. I mean, the man is unbelievably dangerous, in my opinion, for all kinds of reasons. No need to go into them here. But it says, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And so it's good that he's challenging Trump to do something that could be incredibly damaging or to call him out for it. And the key here is that even though he may be unpopular overall, and he certainly is, and he's done all this damage to himself because his political acumen is severely lacking. What he did this year is just borderline psychotic if he was thinking of making himself some kind of popular icon to be followed. That's just almost impossible now. I would say zero chance. But he does have millions of followers. And so there's also a guarantee that he's going to chip away at that following because he keeps attacking, and you notice that his tweets will have millions of views. This means a certain sector of that movement is going to turn away. And really, in the end, with these conflicts, that's the most you can hope for. This is the way democracies are. You don't win. And even 60-40 is really, really hard in a well-functioning democracy. If you get a mid-50s victory, it's considered a landslide. And so we know already that the situation is very divided. That's been happening for several election cycles now. So the whole point is to turn it in a different direction from where it is now, and you just need a few points for the shift to happen. This is where you then run into the people that are so pessimistic that they say, yeah, but that's not going to matter because they're just going to fix the elections. Here's where I disagree. And the reason I disagree is that I can look at the astrology. I said this in prior videos. The astrology trumps him. Here I'm switching back to the president. And if I'm speaking for Musk, same thing. What is curious is that going into next year, the situation becomes way more difficult because Saturn makes its squares. Right now, Jupiter is on the sun. Now, that gives him power. He's exercising his power. It's a pretty sad Jupiter over the sun transit when he could have been in a much better place than he is today had he managed himself better in prior months. But he didn't, and yet with Jupiter being there, it does enhance his power for now. Going into about the spring of next year when Saturn starts to move into Aries more and more, and it finds its way to direct squares to his planets, rendering him probably completely unpopular. But hey, who cares? By then he'll have done a lot of damage. That's the whole point. In that sense, you have to like the enemy of your enemy. And so this is what I noticed today because the latest polls came out on Musk, and he's now down into the 20s because obviously Democrats despise him. But I noticed that about 45% of Republicans still approve of him. That's not as good as when it used to be 80% in the spring. Main point is that it's very threatening to the MAGA movement, especially someone with a megaphone this big. So one of the ways to cope with situations like this is you got to take what you can get and you chip away. And I know that there are people that are always looking for the home run. What can just happen to solve the whole problem, make all these people disappear? The answer is almost certainly nothing, okay? Because as some have pointed out, which is true, some have said, well, if something happens to Trump, we're going to get JD. Yeah, that's true. That's almost certainly true. And if it's not JD, these people will make Lauren Boebert president before they turn power over to someone else. That's how it is. I think it's completely unrealistic to expect anything different. Just like I remember when we were in the Biden period, and this jackass of a man who is now president was agitating about how he needed to be reinstated. And I remember thinking, this is complete bupkis. That doesn't happen. The system has no mechanism for that. Neither does it have it now to do the same thing in the other direction. So even though I may relate to cosmic patterns, and I certainly do, astrology is like that. It's powerful language. I like to keep my feet on the ground. We're on planet Earth. There are planet Earth rules that you have to work through. You can't just do something magical and immediately change everything at the drop of a hat. I think that's really, really important. And in the meantime, there's plenty to be encouraged by because, well, this example would be right now, he's dealing with quite a problem here, that it's splitting his base. I'm now back to Trump. And it's approximately what I thought would happen. On some level, you get a Jupiter cycle that is not nearly as helpful. You got the Eris sitting around there, creating pressure, and there you have it. And the more we go now into the later months of the year, the pressure returns for a different reason. I've said that probably it's going to be in large measure the economic problem that he's creating around the tariffs, because Saturn goes back to the place where it was in the spring when he created what he called Liberation Day, which was actually the perfect way to imprison himself. Because in the end, this man, let's face it, we all know this, okay? He is all at once a lying SOS, and SOS stands for sack of, right? And the second thing is, he's monumentally stupid. We know this, right? Even if he may be smart on some level, he can tap into negativity and he can tap into hatred and all that. Sure, he does that really, really well. He's a great con man, but he's not a smart man, right? That's the truth. You want to make him into a smart man? He's not. So let's be patient and let's hang in there, because in the longer term, yes, it'll work out. But if you are saying, hey, save me immediately, no, okay, we need to wait. It's going to be a while, plain and simple.